Daniel Cormier was doing an interview. I think he was talking with Ariel, but he was saying that he's preparing for his last fight, right? And he keeps saying my last fight instead of my next fight or the fight. He keeps saying my last fight, and I don't know if he's finding a strength in that, if he's finding a strength in the reality that this is it, and he's all in on it. There's something about it that I always do question it, though. When he keeps talking about this is it, this is it, this is it. I'm wondering what message he's giving to himself. And I think that he is putting himself in a spot where his chips are in. He is all in. But it's still a little bit of a unique thing to hear a guy talk about. And he was saying that in preparation for this, he said, my last fight is likely to take place in an empty arena. And, talk about coming full circle. Started out as a wrestler, and he wrestled a long time, 2 different Olympic cycles, world championships in between. That was all after he'd already come to the college and the high school and the youth scene. But you wrestled in front of nobody. I mean, even on a good day, if you had 80 people there, that's a pretty normal crowd. And he wrestled at Oklahoma State where they could have some really big crowd, but you're still very small, right? So then he comes into the smaller scenes of MMA, breaks it all the way through the Strikeforce ranks, comes to the UFC, has to basically start back over, main card, works his way up to co-main event, to main event, title fights. So it really is this full circle. And when you do think about it, I've never done that. I had some amateur fights that were very poorly attended, but not nobody. Not where everything's black. Not where the only thing that you can even see is the cage because all the other lights are out. And it's really interesting, too, because if these fights take place at the Apex, I believe, there's 2 sizes of octagons. Some of you might have known that and some of you didn't. I've never given a damn. I couldn't care less if it was in a football field with no cage up whatsoever, if it was in a little tiny ring, fence. I don't care. But other people do. It's a very real thing, the size of the cage that you fight in. I don't know what Daniel's preference would be, but I think I would like to hear that. And I don't know what Stipe's preference would be, but I think that I would like to hear that. And there's a little bit of a belief out there that the more room, the better for the striker. The smaller cage, the better for the wrestler. That he can pin you and trap you, and footwork all of a sudden doesn't mean as many things. Again, I don't really even know what any of that means. This is just a belief out there. I don't have the foggiest idea anything about this, but I can tell you other people do. Matt Mitrione did a fight with, I think it was with Roy Nelson. And Mitrione lost the fight and he was pissed. He is pissed to this day because he called ahead of time to find out if they were fighting in the big cage or the little cage, and he was told the big cage, and when he got there, it was the little cage. Now, that might sound like you're splitting hairs, but Mitrione was legitimately pissed off. And he said it changed his entire plan, it favored his opponent, and that's why he lost. That sounds like excuse-making to the highest of levels, but story's not over. Mitrione rematches Roy Nelson in the size cage that he was prepared for. It wasn't even a close fight. Mitrione absolutely dominated a guy who had absolutely dominated him. So it sounds like the excuse wasn't an excuse, at least not for Mitrione. It was very real. It was very real to the point that he did a rematch many years later, took out the reason that he believes he lost the first fight, and totally changed the outcome. I tell you that story, 1, because it's interesting and entertaining, but 2, I'm just trying to back my premise that it is very real, and if they are fighting at the Apex, it would come into question, is it the big ring or is it the small ring? I would then love to hear what Stipe prefers and what Daniel prefers, and they might be just like me, so man, I couldn't care less. But Stipe does use a lot of movement. He does. Stipe's footwork, the way he's on his feet, I mean, he's the lightest, bouncy heavyweight ever. He moves around like Tyson Fury moves around, or Deontay Wilder. I mean, he moves around like these boxers that are very light on their feet, and he's always shuffling. He's always moving. He is hard to get a hold of. The thing with Stipe, though, is when he does his best work, it's when he's walking you down. Even though he likes to move, and he's so good at moving, he's so good at throwing things out there, when he finally zeroes in and looks to get a guy out of there, he stops doing that. He walks you down. Boom. He walks you down. Boom. But in between, he's on that bicycle. And Daniel Cormier has never been very clear in telling us why he did not elect to take Stipe down in rounds 2, 3, and 4. He has been very clear to tell us that he regrets not doing it, that he regrets, that he appreciates the fact that he had such success in round one, that he's looked himself in the mirror and said, man, why didn't you go do round one again, 2, 3, and 4, and go home as champion? But I'm not sure that it's quite that easy. I don't know that I believe that Daniel got away from his game plan. I believe Daniel wasn't seeing those openings. I believe he was thinking, I need to get my hands on him, but he wasn't seeing where. He wasn't seeing how. And in the process, there was chaos. And I mean, it was a great fight. It was a great slugfest until Stipe started walking him down. I'm only offering you that because when Daniel's talking about fighting in front of an empty crowd, what does that do? Does it do anything? I mean, he brought it up for a reason. He just didn't finish the thought. He was starting to tell us something, but then he stopped. So first off, I would like to know that. Does that affect you? Good or bad or indifferent? And second, does the size of the cage matter to those two guys? I've got my opinion. You're welcome to your opinion. But I really would like to hear that from both the participants, Stipe and Daniel. Do you care if it's the big cage or the little cage?